you need to come up with what are the 4 to 6 kind of big categories of topics that you are going to be talking about on a regular basis in your content, whether it's a podcast, a blog, etc., whatever your content is, and you need to figure out what those big buckets or pillars are.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade thinking beer brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klink proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klink.
Hey there, welcome to episode 114 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink. And today, in today's Foundation Friday episode, we're going to be talking about something that I think is important. And we're going to be talking about creating a content plan and really the importance of having a content plan. Now, if you listened to last week's episode 112, I gave you the tough love that you need to be creating a piece of new, unique content every single week. And that concept can be daunting for people, but it's only daunting if you're really kind of, shooting from the hip. I get it. It used to be even daunting for me because for a long time, I'll be honest with you, even with this podcast, it would be like, oh, what do I need to create now? Let me try to figure it out. And I would just create a podcast episode, or I would try to get people on for interviews, especially early on when I was doing interviews and handling it that way. And because I was shooting from the hip, because I didn't have a plan, because I didn't know what I was doing, and because, that was kind of, this, let's just see what happens attitude, it was daunting to create content. Once I started organizing things and creating a plan, it got much easier. It got to the point that, yes, sometimes I have to, think it through and say, okay, I need to batch, I need to create the content now. But because I have the plan in place, it's not this difficult, really hard thing to do. And so you need to create a content plan for your business. And I want to quickly talk through how you're going to do that and the best ways to do it. Now, this is a short, abbreviated version of this, and there's a couple of things. Last week on the episode, I referred to my Business Building Bootcamp, which has a more in-depth description of how you're going to do this. But also, next week on December 13th, on Friday the 13th, yeah, it's not an ideal date, but it is what it is, I'm going to be doing a workshop. I'm going to have a workshop that is all about how to create your content plan for 2020 and how to do it in a way to maximize the effectiveness and to use your content plan in a way to really drive sales and drive your promotion calendar. And so that's what next week's workshop is going to be all about. If you would like to join me for that workshop, it's a paid workshop, but it's not expensive. You can find out more by heading over to bobbyklink.com/December 2019 workshop. Again, bobbyklink.com/December 2019 workshop. You can find out all about the workshop, more information about kind of what we're going to cover and why it's going to come in handy for you. So check that out. But in this episode, I want to give you a quick overview of the process of content planning. Now, if you've listened to me long enough, hopefully you've heard me talk about this some and you have a sense of what I'm going to say. But the important thing, there are kind of 3 steps in the process of creating content. The first piece is to figure out your buckets or pillars of content. In other words, you need to know what are the general categories of things you're going to be talking about. So this is something that you're going to do in a process of getting to know your ideal customer, your potential fans, the people who would potentially come into your world and buy from you. You're going to figure out what are the 4 to 6 categories of topics that you could talk about that would really serve them, that would light you up, and that would serve your business interest. So it needs to kind of fit all of those rubrics. It can't just be something where, it's something that they want to hear but doesn't serve you, right? I mean, I could talk about all kinds of things related to digital marketing, but that doesn't serve my business because in some sense, it's not moving people along in the process. And there's some room for that. You can do some of those discussions. But you've probably noticed recently that I'm talking about things that relate very specifically to the things that I offer, that I sell, things related to my fans framework, about finding your fans, the power of fans. And just so you know, creating content, emailing your list, all of those things fall within that. But you'll also notice that in some sense, my Foundation Fridays episodes fall into kind of one of 3 categories. It's either a business foundation, a legal foundation, or a mindset foundation. And each one of those is important because, again, the business foundations are all often kind of feeding into the business side, Fans First Society that I sell. The legal foundations obviously are helping people with the legal stuff, and I offer things related to the legal stuff. And then the mindset foundations is something that I have found and that I've discovered this year especially, that quite honestly, the mindset stuff is as important as anything else. And so helping people to get their mindset in the right place will help them to move forward, which helps them along their customer journey to potentially buy from me. If nothing else, I'm helping people with all of this stuff, but each one of them also moves people forward. So you need to come up with what are the 4 to 6 kind of big categories of topics that you are going to be talking about on a regular basis in your content, whether it's a podcast, a blog, etc., whatever your content is, and you need to figure out what those big buckets or pillars are. That's step 1. Once you've done step 1, you move to step 2, which is a pretty simple thing. You brainstorm content or topics under each one of those pillars or categories. So again, this isn't rocket science. You just do a brain dump. Hopefully you know your audience well enough to understand what it is are the struggles. Like in my case, I can think through 50, mindset issues that I can talk about. I can think through probably 50 pretty easily legal topics to talk about. I can think about 50 or so, topics on the business stuff. And so you can kind of see how I just do this brain dump and I come up with all of these different topics within each one of the different pillars. That's step 2. And again, that's pretty simple. So then you move to step 3, and step 3 is just pull out a calendar and do the scheduling. And you could do a lot of different ways, and this is part of what we're going to be talking about in a lot more depth during next week's workshop. I mean, one way to do it is simply, kind of the base level is just say, okay, I'm just here are my content, here are my pillars. I'm just going to kind of rotate through or do series or something like that. And you just kind of do it in the abstract based upon your different pillars or buckets. That's the base level way to do it. And that's the way that most people will start, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. When you go down that route, what you end up doing is you end up helping to kind of, just nurture people and attract people throughout the year that are potentially relevant to you. So that's one piece. Then the next level, the kind of more advanced level, and this is what we're really going to be talking about next week, is figuring out how to use your content and how to schedule content around your promotions and around what you're selling. Because when you get that, when you really dial that piece in, you can really start thinking through, okay, well, here's what I'm promoting in February. So at the beginning of January, I'm going to start this content, ramp up. And we'll talk about that. But the idea is to do a runway of content that leads up to your paid content, your paid offers when they're going to be available. So we're going to talk about that more during next week's workshop because, again, it's too much to go into in a Foundations Friday. But you can kind of get the sense that if you're going to go down that route, maybe what you're going to do are kind of like, seasons or series where you're going to kind of do multiple episodes in a row related to a single topic that relates to what you have to promote or what you're going to have as your free webinar. Whatever it is, however you're doing promotions, you're going to think through how to put your content together in a way to make it work. So that's, in a nutshell, how you're going to create your plan. And once you have that plan in place, you can feel good that you're ready to just kind of go about and start executing. And think about it for a second. If whether it's every week you have to create content because you don't batch it out, or if you batch it out in advance, how much easier would it be if you knew exactly what you were going to create and the only work was to actually create it? That makes it much easier. So you should do the planning in one big block so that you have everything planned out, you have everything scheduled out, and then it's just a matter of executing. So that's my Foundations Friday is create a plan, create a content plan. Ideally, you would do 12 months, but at a minimum, do 6 months out where you know what you're going to be talking about when. That's it. That's it for this episode. If you want to join me for that workshop, we're going to go deeper on this, how to create a content plan that is really dialed in to your promo calendar and to your offers. I would love to have you join me on next week's workshop. You can find out more by heading to bobbyklink.com/December 2019 workshop. That's it for this episode. I'll see you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.